Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, am I the jerk for making my ex-wife and her kids live in poverty even though I have money? I, 46 male, recently finalized my divorce with my now ex-wife, Lisa, who's 41 female. We were only married for 3 years, and the cause for divorce was issue with finances. We had separate bank accounts for our own savings and checkings accounts for where our salaries went to. I did create an extra account for her where I would deposit money into it monthly just as fun spending money, as I make significantly more and I wanted her to have less stress with her finances. Even with this setup, she would consistently go over the limit and would even take lots of cash out of my wallet and personal safe without informing me. When we were married, she and her 2 kids, who are 18 and 16, from her previous relationship, moved into my house that I own, and I paid for them to go to a private school. Their dad is in their life, so they never saw me as anything other than the guy who married their mom. But I understand that, because they did meet me much later in their lives and not as kids. Regardless, I tried to keep a good relationship, but neither of them ever wanted that and made me feel like an ATM. I got a really thorough prenup made before we got married, so I basically kept everything I have except for some alimony that I have to pay every month. After the divorce, Lisa and her kids moved out, and I informed her that I have closed the bank account I made for sending her money, and I'm going to stop paying for the kids' private school tuition after this year is over. So that way, at least they finish the year out and have a few months to figure out next plans and transferring. It's been about 3 months since then, and I got a nasty call from her saying she can't afford rent anymore, so her and the kids have to move in with her mother, and basically she went off on me for taking away the credit card attached to my bank account. Apparently, the kids have also had to stop some of their extracurricular sports because she can't pay for the programs. She said I left her in poverty and she had to apply for government assistance and food stamps. Also, when we were married, I had mentioned potentially paying for her kids' college tuition when the time comes, but it was never a set thing. Apparently, she still thought this offer was on the table and mapped out how her son had just got accepted to his dream school and the cost of attendance would be $80,000 per year. So she wanted to know how I would be sending the funds for this. I just told her she's crazy if she thinks I'm giving up my hard-earned money for someone else's kids I have no ties to anymore, and that I covered her bills completely for 3 years, so she should have saved her salary then instead of blowing through it on designer items. A lot of her family and friends and her kids' dad are calling me, saying I need to provide for the kids at least because I'm their stepdad, and that's a lifelong commitment. Also, according to them, it's not fair that I'm taking away their opportunities to be at a fancy private school and college, especially when I have the money to pay for all of it and keep up the lifestyle to how it was when they lived with me. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. What kind of sane person would expect their ex-husband to pay for her and her kids' lives? Not to mention the fact that these kids aren't even yours. Tell them that their ATM is now closed and wish them the best with their life. Block their numbers and enjoy your money. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Her ex-husband, as in the father of the 2 kids in question, your former stepkids, called you up and said you needed to pay for his kids to go to college? ETA, you were never really married, were you? Marriage includes sharing, and you weren't really sharing. Separate bank accounts, strong prenup, etc. I'm not surprised you got divorced. Don't get with a woman who has kids if you're going to always see them as someone else's kids. Not the jerk, but I have a big issue with people who choose to get involved with parents and don't commit to the kids long term. It's not your obligation, but being with her for 3 years, married, plus whatever years dating, this is no small amount. It's 100% your money and you don't have to do anything. I just feel bad for the kids. Friend lost out on winning $1,000 lotto ticket because of me. I'm part of a specialized friend group where we all share the same hobby. Not really a hobby, but I don't want to give out personal information. I was really excited to join this group as I've been an avid hobbyist for over 6 years. I got to meet the entire group minus Mike, and we all got along great. It was an easy transition into the group and I was having a lot of fun. Finally, about a month after joining, I met Mike. Mike was okay, pretty tough to get to know, like pulling teeth, but I just kind of ignored it and kept moving on with everyone else. Meanwhile, Mike was really inconsistent with showing up to the twice-a-month group meetings, so I didn't really get to know him. Throughout the years, Mike had an infamous birthday party that he would invite the group to, except for me. The first year I was okay with it, because I had just joined and I was about 2 weeks in. Second year, I forgot about it until everyone was talking about it and then asked me why I didn't go. Well, I wasn't invited. Third year, same thing. I wasn't invited. So that one stung a little, but I made it my mission to really try and get to know him a bit more. However, it was never reciprocated and proved to be a difficult task. The problem was, the guy runs hot and cold. He's overly dramatic on some days and quiet as a mouse on other days. One time he'll get mad at you if you hug him, another time he'll be in your face all excited telling you the latest new gadget he got. Then the next time you see him, he's the complete opposite. Super huggy and barely talks. You'll ask him questions about himself and he'll either give you one-word answers or very vague answers. This is not just to me, but to everyone, and you never know which mic you will get on any given day. I finally asked the group about him and their thoughts, and they all said exactly what I said down to the letter. I followed up with, why is he with this group? Technically, he was with the starting group members and has never left, so everyone just tolerates him. For our meeting just before his birthday, I got him a card, wrote him a nice sentiment, and bought $10 worth of scratchers. I brought it with me and he didn't show up. Came home, told the hubby that I was disappointed and a little mad that once again, he doesn't show, and that holds back the group dynamic for the evening. Also, he wasn't there for the third time in a row, which is a rule break within the group. So out of my frustration, I decided to scratch them off myself. To my surprise, every card was a winner. Technically won $1,012. I was so excited. This is the fourth year, and he celebrated his birthday month in August. Didn't invite me again, but at this point, I'm no longer offended or hurt by it. I don't want to go. It's almost mid-September, and he's endlessly complaining on social media right now on how broke he is from the 2 parties that he threw. Now his car repairs totaling $1,000, and he's basically crying for anyone to donate some money. I keep laughing at his posts because had he shown up to our meeting, he would have had the money to pay for his car repair. Also, no one in the group knew I bought a card and that I had some winning lotto tickets. Additional info. He wrote in our private group chat asking for some financial help. I responded, I'm praying for you right now. Praying hands emoji. Honestly, if he was a nicer person, I would have held on to the card and lotto tickets for him. We have a meeting tonight and he's not going even though someone offered him a ride. He seems like the type that would hold a grudge or go off on me for owing him this money. Again, he's super dramatic and there's no telling on how he would react to the news. Updates. His aunt gave him $1,500 to get his car fixed. He went shopping and bought a dog and a $200 outfit. So he still doesn't have a car, but I belong to his social media and he easily gets around town and out of the city, so he has some type of transformation, but I know it's not his own car that needed repair. Now on to the update of what happened Wednesday. So this past week was our Secret Santa gift exchange. Wouldn't you know it, I got him and he got me. He didn't show up, so now I'm without a gift exchange and I just said in my head, forget it. I was prepared for this and bought something I liked, which was more lottery tickets. I scratched them off in front of everyone and won $75. Super exciting. Everyone blasted it on social media. He contacted me this morning saying that he couldn't make it last night because his dog was sick and he had my gift ready. He was excited to receive the $75 because he really needed it. I didn't respond. Meanwhile, he posted on his social media that he was out with friends that night, so I guess he forgot that we're connected on social media. Last night, we had a special meeting that was pre-planned for months. We did the Secret Santa exchange earlier in the week because we knew we wouldn't be able to celebrate it last night. He shows up, gives me a big hug, talks in the most friendliest way ever, which he has never done with me before, so it just looks and feels like someone completely sucking up. He eventually asks me directly for the money and doesn't even have the gift he's supposed to give me with an exchange. It's not like he had a backpack or a bag that it was in. Him. Okay, great. So where's the money I was supposed to win from my gift exchange? Me. Oh, don't worry about the gift exchange. I'm fine. And I walked away. That's all I said. It didn't even make complete sense to me when I thought about it later, but it left him dumbfounded. He tried to complain about it to the other group members, but they were just not having it. With no collaboration, they all basically said the same thing. You hardly ever show up, and when you do, you're not 100% in. You rarely talk to OP when she's here, and now you want her to hand over $75 for a gift you weren't even here for? She had nothing to open and was left out. She owes you nothing. I have a feeling that this will not be the last I hear of it, but I will stand my ground. Am I the jerk for taking the family on vacation without my wife and stepdaughter? My stepdaughter is in high school and has a best friend she's known since they were babies. My wife and I have 2 kids together. My stepdaughter's best friend has a birthday in December. We are well aware of her birthday because we attend it every year. This year, my side of the family planned to take a huge overseas Christmas vacation, which required us to ask the friend's mother for the party date. We planned and bought our tickets to leave 2 days after the party so that my stepdaughter wouldn't miss it. Monday, my stepdaughter came home and told us that the party date was moved to accommodate some of her friend's family members who decided last minute to fly in for it. The problem is that the date was moved to one well after our departure date. Here's the problem. First, we're not made of money, so for us to change the flight and hotel for our family would more than double the cost. Second, it will be a 2 weeks overseas trip, so I already had my vacation approved and I can't change it. If we fly out after the party, my vacation will be cut down to only a week. Third, I only get to see some of my siblings only at Christmas, so if I didn't go this year, I won't be able to see them again until next year. Fourth, my entire side of the family planned our vacation around the party date months ago. My original solution was to tell her friend's parents to keep their original date since my family planned around their schedule. My wife immediately shot down that idea. My second solution was for us to leave as planned, but change only my stepdaughter's ticket since she's on break and she's old enough to fly by herself. My wife shot that down too since she's also friends with the other mother and wants to go to the party. My wife's solution is for us to just fly out after the party. I don't like this idea at all because of the added cost and lessening time. Our talk turned into arguments that lasted all week. Last night, my wife put her foot down and said that we're not missing the birthday party, to which I replied that she's not missing the birthday party. I told her I'm flying out with our 2 kids as planned whether or not she's on the flight. That took our argument to the next level to the point my stepdaughter called me a jerk, so I tried to ground her, at which point my wife said I couldn't because she was justified. Everything is a mess now. Update. There are 2 common questions I think I should answer. It's a Sweet 16 birthday party. It's going to be huge with over 100 people in attendance and catered food. I've been told almost everyone in their class is attending. The other mother and my wife have been friends since the birth of their daughters. She helped my wife through her divorce, and my stepdaughter stayed with them for days at a time during the worst part of that process. Not the jerk. Did your wife and daughter fail to notice that although your family planned your trip around the dates of her friend's birthday party, her friend's parents couldn't be bothered to keep to their planned date, and they changed the party date for their family's wishes? So in your daughter and wife's eyes, not only does your daughter's friend take priority over your whole family, but your daughter's friend's extended family takes priority over your extended family. One of 2 things happen here in the minds of your daughter's friend's parents. Either they have no respect for you whatsoever and expect you to absorb thousands of dollars in fees to change your flights and expect you to miss half of your family vacation, or they actually don't really care if your daughter goes to this party or not. I think the moral rule that should hold here is that you don't break prior plans because you get a better offer. You made plans with your family for specific dates, times, and places. You and your family all spent a lot of money on this group trip where you could all see each other. You would be letting them down if you only showed up for half of it, and that's in addition to the money it would cost you to change the dates. Info. Your wife sounds like a stay-at-home mom. Does she work? Seems like she's awfully cavalier with the family funds. I can't imagine an average working person thinking this is a good idea. You had it right the first time. Stepdaughter stays behind and flies alone. You're the jerk for marrying a single mom. You and your wants will never be as important as her daughter's, no matter how much of a spoiled brat she is. When will people learn to stop making this life-ruining mistake? A lawyer's petty revenge on a sovereign citizen. I run across sovereign citizens now and again, the kind that like to file bogus legal documents filled with Latin phrases and notarized with a red seal to make everything official. These guys think legal terms are like incantations of spells. If you just say the right thing in a document, your legal problem magically disappears. Lawyers and judges hate these guys. They're super annoying. Years ago, I broke one of my rules and took a case for a friend. It was a family estate squabble, and my client's brother owed him money. The sovereign citizen brother got his greedy hands on his father's money outside of the estate process by getting himself made joint with his elderly father on some bank accounts. Pulling that stunt is a no-no in Canada, definitely frowned upon by the courts. But so far, as sovereign citizen man was concerned, it was finders keepers all the way, and his father would be darned. I sent sovereign citizen man a letter demanding that he pay, and he stuck to his playbook. He paid my client with a check. The check was not your normal check drawn on an actual bank account. Instead, it was some weird BS thing that he got off the web. The bank the check was drawn on didn't even exist, and the check had all kinds of strange wording and fine print on the back. The thing about these sovereign citizen guys is that they have no notion of the consequences of the bogus documents and bad advice that they get off the internet. Sovereign citizen made a huge mistake by sending me the bogus check. "Can I cash this?" my client said when he showed him the check. "Go for it, but tell the bank in advance that you know it won't clear so that they won't think you're pulling a scam." So my client cashes the check, and of course it totally bounces. After the check bounced, we sued the brother for the money he stole from the estate. It was a short, simple lawsuit, just a few pages long. We served the brother at the house he owned, free and clear thanks to the money he stole from the estate. The guy had 30 days to defend, and on day 30, I got his defense, filled with the usual sovereign citizen nonsense. The defense also had a huge mistake in it, one of the biggest I've ever seen, and I've been doing this a long time. Sovereign citizen started harassing me and my staff. He sent emails, letters, he left voicemail messages. He came by the office uninvited, demanding to see me and making threats. He kept it up until the cops said they'd arrest him if he came by again, but by then, it was time for his court date. So I'm in court asking for judgment, and the jerk genius is there, talking his legal babble, saying words he doesn't even understand. The judge shut him down after about 10 seconds and gave my client judgment. Sovereign citizen has a meltdown and is escorted out of the courthouse. Of course, he appeals, but I don't care, because of the mistake the guy had made right out of the gate. His mistake was serious and fatal. I don't know about other countries, but in Canada, if someone gives you a check and it fails to clear, you can sue for that. All you have to do is prove that a check written to you bounced, and that's all you need. The court will give you judgment. So when Sovereign Citizen Man sent my client the bogus check, he handed my client an airtight cause of action and easy win of a lawsuit. And of course, I pounced on it. When Sovereign Citizen's check bounced, my client sued him for that too, in a separate legal proceeding that we started on the same day as the estate case. The two claims looked almost identical, at least on the front page. My client's name was the same, defendant's name was the same, and court file number was identical, but for the final digit. When we served the sovereign citizen with Claim 1, the estate claim, we also sued him on Claim 2. I think that he thought the second claim was just a copy of the first, because he only defended the estate action. On the bad check case, he didn't defend, and I had default judgment after 30 days. So a few months later, the jerk wants to negotiate. Even though the estate case is under appeal, an appeal he said he was sure he would win, he was willing to throw his brother a bone. He'd pay, but nowhere near the amount of the judgment. It was then that I let him know that we had sued twice, and that I had a judgment in the second action as well as the first, and that now the man's home was totally tied up with the writs I filed. "You better hope you win that appeal," I said to him, "because you're literally betting your house on it." Sovereign Citizen did his usual meltdown thing, but once he was finished with the screaming and the threats, he had a bit of a come-to-Jesus moment. We settled with him, sort of. He paid back all the money he stole from the estate, plus all of my client's legal fees, plus some more, just for being a bit of a jerk and a sovereign citizen to boot. Later that year, he was at my client's house for Christmas dinner. Go figure. Families can be pretty weird. Am I the jerk for telling my stepsister that no one wants her to host Christmas? I, 21 female, live with my mom and stepdad. My stepdad has one daughter, Tia, who's in her 30s. Tia is married and has 9 kids with her husband. They also have over 7 cats. They live in a 4-bedroom house, but as you can imagine, it's pretty cramped. I haven't spent loads of time with Tia as she was already an adult when our parents got married. My mom and the rest of my immediate biological family really dislike Tia and her husband. I visited Tia's home quite a few times over the years, and it's always looked like an absolute mess. The house always stinks of cat pee, and you can't even see the floor where there's just stuff everywhere. The kids themselves always seem pretty taken care of, it's just the actual house. Tia's husband is also always working on do-it-yourself home projects that never get finished, which also just adds to the clutter and crap everywhere. In my family, we normally rotate around who's hosting the Christmas get-together. Tia last hosted it in 2019. It caused an argument between my mom and stepdad behind closed doors because my mom said if Tia hosts again, she's not going. As usual, the house was a mess. Tia's husband served everyone, including all of the kids of the family, seriously undercooked chicken. It was still cold in the middle. My mom pointed this out and they threw it in the trash. Luckily, no one had eaten it. They had no gifts for anyone, not even my stepdad who spent over $600 on their kids. I know gifts aren't absolutely necessary, but this just felt rude. They then unexpectedly asked everyone to leave after we had been there for 2 hours, as Tia's mom and maternal grandparents were coming over. This year, Tia has volunteered to host again and invited us. My mom does not want to go and said we should just stay home this Christmas. This time, my stepdad actually agreed, so we're going to stay home. My older biological siblings also do not want to visit Tia again for Christmas, and all told her they aren't going and said they have other plans. Tia was pleasant about it over text, but on Facebook she made passive-aggressive posts about how her fake family doesn't want to visit her on Christmas. I may be the jerk because I was growing tired of seeing these posts. I ran into Tia last week at the store and she mentioned it to me, saying that she's hurt by everyone not visiting. I told her very bluntly we aren't visiting her because no one wants her to host. She and her husband happily accepted gifts from everyone but got nothing for anyone, tried to feed us raw chicken, and their house is a mess. Tia and I started arguing, and she said that we should have communicated to her like adults rather than just not visiting her. But I feel like some things are just common sense. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Maybe because she always lives like that, she doesn't notice most of the things people object to. However, serving dangerously undercooked chicken, still cold in the center, is something anybody should have noticed. This is just not safe. The chicken by itself was reason to not risk it again. The other awful things were just trimmings to the central problem. She's right. You are not the jerk for not wanting her to host, but your behavior is kind of immature. Yes, some things are just common sense, but sometimes common doesn't mean universal, and it sounds like no one has said a word for 4 years. Everyone sucks. What are you gonna do about it? Call the cops? I was a senior in high school when all of a sudden I got sick at school and had to be sent home. Because my car was in the shop, Mom had to come get me. It's about 9:30 a.m. when this happened. As we're driving up a very busy street, we see 2 kids who are about 7 to 8, we'll call them Frank and Zelda, trying to cross. Worried, my mom pulls over to see what's going on. The conversation went roughly as follows. Mom, are you guys okay? What are you doing here? Frank, Dr. Idiot said we couldn't come to school early, so he sent us home. Now, my mom was very familiar with Dr. Idiot. He was the principal at the elementary school my younger brother was attending at the time. My brother, Mark, was going through some behavioral issues at the time, and Mom was commonly called to the office, to the point that they were on a first-name basis. Not that he allowed her to use his first name, because I have a doctorate in education, so it's Dr. Idiot. So in other words, he was an entitled idiot. There was a gas station 10 feet away, so Mom tells Frank and Zelda to meet us there. We pulled in, got some water for the kids as it was a hot day, and Mom calls Dr. Idiot's cell phone. Again, the conversation went roughly as follows. This is Dr. Idiot. Mom, hi, this is Mark's mom. I have 2 kids here named Frank and Zelda, and they say they were sent home early. Yes, their parents dropped them off at 6 a.m. because they had to work. Something about mandatory overtime. Of course, we're not a daycare, so I told the kids to go home and wait for the bus. Mom, are you kidding me? We're 5 miles away from the school. They walked all this way. It's a wonder that nothing's happened to them. What are you going to do about it? Call the cops? Click. Mom was absolutely floored, but she decided to give Dr. Idiot a nice dose of reality. At the time, we lived in a small town. How small? So small that sometimes the chief of police would have to walk the beat. And that day, he happened to be a block or so away from the gas station. When he got the call, he arrived, got the whole story from not only Frank and Zelda, but from my mom and myself. And being a father of 2 elementary kids himself, he was upset. He looked at Mom and said, "It's time I had some words with Dr. Idiot." The chief of police drove Zelda and Frank to the school in the squad car, which they were super excited about, personally escorted them to their class, and then marched to Dr. Idiot's office and proceeded to tear him a new one, telling Dr. Idiot that he would help if charges were pressed on him. From that day on, Dr. Idiot allowed Frank and Zelda to be at the school early on the days their parents had mandatory overtime. Update. More details from my mom about why Frank and Zelda were just dropped off at school. Their aunt works at the elementary school and had agreed to watch them until school started a couple of hours later. She wasn't on the clock. Frank and Zelda didn't live in a good part of town, and their parents, understandably, didn't feel their kids would be safe if they were alone. If Dr. Idiot had driven them home to wait for the bus, it wouldn't have gotten on the chief of police's nerves. 6 a.m.? They were lucky to have the head teacher there to begin with. It's Frank and Zelda's parents in the wrong here. Told my Karen sister she's not a stay-at-home mom, she's just selfish. I want to make it clear, I'm not insulting being a stay-at-home mom, just my sister's version of it. I know how much hard work it is, and I'm not putting anyone down for it. But my sister really does just sit around doing nothing all day, while somebody else does all the work and then whines about how hard it is being a stay-at-home mom, and I've had enough of it. My sister, 26 female, and I, 24 female, have always been polar opposites, so we do clash on quite a few things, but generally we are close. She has 2 kids, Rose, who's 6, and Ty, who's 7, and I have a son, Oz, who's 2, and they're really close. Sister has always been a stay-at-home mom ever since she left school and never had a job, whereas I've always been career-driven. My job's hours can be long and irregular, but I love it. Though, if ever, say I'm tired or I've had a hard day, Sister has to one-up me and say how she's even more tired or has had an even harder day because she's a stay-at-home mom, so works 24/7. The thing is, all the things a stay-at-home mom does, she doesn't do. Both kids are at school, and her husband Dan is the one that gets them ready, helps with homework, cooks all the meals, they have a cleaner, and Sister doesn't drive, so my mom picks the kids up from school and looks after them until Dan gets home from work. Most weekends, Dan will bring the kids over to me. I live a 10-minute walk away, so Sister can have a break. So I don't have much sympathy for her, but most of the time I just let it go. But last week was half term. I was able to get most of the week off, but on Friday there was an emergency at work, so I needed to go in immediately. My husband was away, and my nanny and babysitter were busy, so I asked Mom if she could look after Oz as I had to go into work urgently, but she couldn't as she was looking after Rose. I asked where Sister was, and Mom told me she was at home but was feeling tired so needed a rest. I said that she could bring Rose over, but she couldn't as Rose had friends over for a play date. But I took Oz and rushed over to Sister's house to beg Mom to take him. While I'm talking to Mom, Sister came out. I explained the situation, but she said that as Rose has friends over, it would be inappropriate for Oz to be there. So I asked why Mom couldn't take Oz back home for a few hours and Sister watches her girls. Sister seemed offended by the suggestion that she should look after her own kid herself, and I had about had enough and knew this was just wasting time when I had to get to work, so said, "Well, thanks for nothing," and left and took Oz to work with me. It worked out fine, but I was upset with my sister. So today, I went over to Sister's house. I wanted to put the situation behind us and move on, but she brought it up. She said she was waiting for an apology from me. When I laughed, she told me I just don't get how hard it is being a stay-at-home mom. I told her she doesn't even know what a hard job is, and the fact that she calls herself a stay-at-home mom is a joke, and that she's just lazy and selfish. I left, and she told me that I'm not welcome back. Employee screams at a guy who ends up being the company's CEO. This is actually a story from my mom from a couple of years ago. She works for an energy company in the customer service, taking phone calls, answering questions, and sometimes helping fix simple issues. It had started not too long ago, and she was one of the few first employees, so right from the start, she knew pretty much everyone who worked there, including the CEO, who she describes as a very nice, down-to-earth guy who'd always dress pretty casually, so he'd blend in with everyone else pretty easily. After a couple of months, they started hiring more people to work, including this one guy who was apparently very entitled and considered himself better than everyone. Mom and a few others didn't like him because he was apparently arrogant, always tried to correct others only to be wrong himself, kept making the same mistakes, ignored many rules on the floor, and had a huge temper and would scream at anyone who said something he didn't like. The screaming would 99.9% of the time be something along the lines of, "Who the heck do you think you are to insert whatever someone did or said?" Many complained about him, but the manager at the time was too nice or scared or both to actually do something about him. One day, he was apparently playing games on his phone while at the same time talking to a customer and telling him all kinds of random wrong things when the CEO came to check the floor after a meeting. Seeing this guy, he walked up to him and calmly informed him he wasn't allowed to have his phone out while helping a customer, so could he completely focus on said customer for the moment. Cue the guy literally throwing his headset off, jumping to his feet and screaming in his face, "And who do you think you are to tell me how to do my job?" along with stomping his foot at each syllable. The boss stood there for a moment, obviously in shock, and the guy, thinking he had won, smirked all smugly before the boss pulled a, well, boss move. "Well, I just so happen to be the CEO of this company," he screamed back, even copying the foot stomping. The dumb guy lost the smirk and, according to my mom, went from angry bright red to pure white in half a second. The boss then calmly grabbed the headset, which apparently still had the customer, who heard everything, and apologized for what she heard and just asked her what she needed help with. Finished in a minute, and before hanging up, once again apologized and told her the other guy was fired so it wouldn't happen again. As soon as he hung up, he told the other guy that he was serious and he'd better gather his stuff. In the end, the annoying employee was gone. The manager got a talk on dealing with bad employees, and someone baked the boss a cake. Grandma complied with Grandpa's request for 50 years, much to his chagrin. Something someone said to me today reminded me of this tale, and I thought some of you would appreciate hearing it. So, this is my grandmother's story. My family has been telling the tale for decades. Grandpa himself told it to his daughter's fiancé as a lesson in not understanding his new bride. Grandma told it slightly differently to my mom when she and my father were engaged. This is somewhere between the two versions. It's a lesson in be careful what you wish for, as you just might get it. Personally, I've always thought that it was hilarious. My grandparents were very old school. Grandpa got a job working for John Deere as a teen and worked his way up the ladder to foreman, then manager. Grandma was a typical housewife in the 1950s and was held to typical housewife standards. She was to cook and clean and be prepared to entertain Grandpa's business associates at a moment's notice. It was her job to make sure the kids were taken care of and never got in her husband's way. She was expected to have dinner on the table at 5:30 sharp when he got home from work. Her house and herself were to be impeccably kept at all times, etc. They were progressive and well off enough that Grandma had her own car. She was expected to use it to run the household errands and take the 4 kids to appointments and such. It was important that her husband not be bothered with such things. The household and family were her responsibility. He had a job. Well, one day, Grandpa arrived home from work, and not only was dinner not on the table, but Grandma wasn't even there. The kids, teens at the time, hadn't been fed. Their homework was still on the kitchen table, there were unwashed dishes in the sink, and a dozen other little chores hadn't been done yet. Most importantly, Grandpa was inconvenienced. He had been home just long enough to let his frustration stew into anger when Grandma's car pulled into the driveway. He began shouting at her before she had even had the chance to set down her purse or take off her jacket. He ranted about all the things she hadn't done because she was out running around when she should have been home, taking care of the house and making dinner. He worked very hard all day to provide for this family. Was it too much to ask for a hot dinner when he got home? She'd had a very good reason for not being home, but he never let her tell it, accepting no excuses. But she was a good wife, so she intended to let him vent for a while. Then she would serve him supper and explain what had gone wrong. Then Grandpa messed up. As sometimes happens when we speak in anger, he began to blame the wrong thing for his irritation. He began to blame the car and her access to it. He said something to the effect of, "You don't have any business out driving around anyway. You should be home. I should never have let you start driving in the first place. You shouldn't be driving." "You don't want me to drive?" Grandma asked calmly, retrieving her keys from her purse. "Fine, then I won't drive ever again." And she set those keys on the counter, put her things away, and served dinner. And bless her heart, Grandma stuck with that declaration no matter how much more difficult it made life. Grandpa had to take afternoons off in the middle of the week when a teacher scheduled a meeting. He didn't get a moment's peace on the weekends between grocery trips and taking the kids to activities or doctor's appointments or for haircuts or clothes. He had to drive Grandma to every Saturday salon appointment. Previously, Grandma had taken herself and the kids to church, letting him sleep. Now he had to wake up early on Sundays and take them all himself. Grandpa was nearly as stubborn as his wife. He held out, expecting her to apologize and ask for her keys back. She never did. Instead, she simply rearranged the household schedule so that he could handle all the driving. Months later, after never getting a single weekend to relax, after having dinner pushed back nearly every day because he had to drive someone someplace, he finally gave in and apologized. He tried to tell her that he was wrong and that she should start driving again. He tried to tell her that he now appreciated all she did to make his life easier. He all but begged her to take those keys. I suspect that Grandma had always disliked driving because she never did take back those keys. Nothing Grandpa said or did could convince her to get back behind the wheel. He had said she had no business driving a car and she was going to hold him to that declaration no matter what. For over 50 years, until the day she passed, Grandma never drove a car again for any reason. Not after the kids graduated and moved out. Not after Grandpa retired. Even after Grandpa passed in the 80s, she still refused because my husband always said that I shouldn't drive. Kids ask for chocolate over ice cream. Mom complies. This happened earlier today at the grocery store. A mom was in line in front of me with her 2 daughters. Neither could have been older than 8. Buying a random assortment of items, including roughly a gallon of Neapolitan ice cream. Suddenly, one of the girls looks over at a display of candy bars and her eyes light up. Mommy, I want a chocolate bar. She points to the display. Mom looks over and shakes her head. No, honey, we're already getting ice cream and you don't need a chocolate bar. The girl grabs one of the bars. But I want this so much more than I want ice cream. She waves the bar in front of her mom's face. She, the daughter, also pushes one into her sister's hands to get her on board. With both of her daughters now waving candy bars in front of her, she suddenly gets the look. So, you want candy bars instead of ice cream, is that it? The daughters are nodding and emphatically saying, Yes, we want the candy bars, not the ice cream. So the mom turns to the cashier and says, Can you please remove the ice cream? They don't want it. Cashier dutifully clears the ice cream from her order and puts the tub next to the register. She tells the mom her total and is handed the money. The mom starts bagging up her groceries while the kids tear open their candy bars and start devouring their treat. Right as the mom finishes putting the bagged groceries in her cart for the trip out to the car, the kids finish their candy bars, look at the empty wrappers, and then at the tub of ice cream sitting next to the register. Realization dawns in their eyes. Hey Mom, could we still get the ice cream after all? Mom has a smirk on her face. You said you didn't want the ice cream. You got the candy bars instead. The daughter, who started the push for candy bars, looks at the small, empty wrapper in her hands and back at the tub of ice cream. But this is so much smaller than that. Mom looks back at the ice cream tub and says, Oh my goodness, you're right. Seems like maybe you did yourself out of a lot of ice cream later in exchange for a bit of chocolate now. She sighs. Isn't that a shame? Daughter tries to turn on the frown. But Mom, can't you just go back and buy it? It's right there. She shakes her head. No, sweetie, I already paid for the groceries. It's the next gentleman's turn. Meaning me. The cashier had already started scanning my groceries. The daughter takes one last look at the ice cream and their empty wrappers before turning and running away. Not too far. I think they just wanted to not see the ice cream anymore. As soon as they were off, I burst out laughing. Now that's a lesson. Way to go, Mom. She smiled back at me. Something tells me it's a lesson they won't soon forget. Because I'm in such a cheerful mood, I say, You want me to buy the ice cream so they can have it later? It would be no trouble. She smiles wider and shakes her head. Nope, if I let you do that, they wouldn't learn their lesson, now would they? Moral of the story, be careful what you wish for, kids. You just might get it. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.